It's time for Fight News Now. Welcome to the show. My name is John Pollock, and this is where we get you up to date on everything happening in mixed martial arts. Today on the show, you're going to hear from Georgi Karakhanyan, Frank Mir, and UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones. John Ramdine and Robin Black are here as they preview this weekend's UFC doubleheader from opposite points of the world, and the Shift takes a look at Transformers 4. It's a packed show as usual, so let's get started with this week's newsmakers. The last week has been a tumultuous one for the Bellator organization as they went through a facelift with Bjorn Rebney and Tim Donaher out and Scott Coker in as the new president. Many are awaiting to see the changes Coker and Viacom implement, and we spoke with Georgi Karakhanyan last week, who did compete for Bellator in the past, and he gave us his thoughts on the changes to the company.
I think it's going to be great for the organization. It's going to be good for the fighters. I think overall it's going to be good for mixed martial arts because, Scott Coker, he started Strikeforce and, look where he took Strikeforce to. And I feel like him being in charge of Bellator, there's going to be new exciting things. That he's going to build a lot of new fighters, a lot of old fighters. And, he's going to make overall the promotion a good promotion. And I think first thing you should do is get rid of the tournaments. There's too many tournaments where we lose track of who won the last one, who's the champion. So I think if he just gets rid of tournaments, maybe once every other year or every 2 years, that'd be good. I think there's a lot of good things to come for Bellator.
Karakhanyan dropped the World Series of Fighting featherweight gold this past weekend to Rick Glenn and suffered a rib injury, which is going to sideline him for the next 3 months. Glenn, on the other hand, looks to have his new opponent set, with Team Alpha Male's Lance Palmer getting a victory on the same show, and seems to make sense for a featherweight title fight coming out of this past weekend's card. Recently, I had a chance to catch up with former UFC heavyweight champion Frank Mir for his reaction to the ban on testosterone replacement therapy by the Nevada State Athletic Commission back in February. Mir was one of the few UFC fighters who was allowed to use the therapy, and we got his reaction to the ban and also all the problems Chael Sonnen has had coming off of it.
Well, yeah, I think that some of the fighters that were, that's definitely weighing into a factor why I'm going to take time off. Is to, certain things just take a long time to heal and to recover from. I feel bad for some of the guys that had events scheduled and then being told that the TRT treatment had to stop. Chael Sonnen in particular, I thought he was doing everything by the book. Here he gets off the TRT as instructed, and he was taking the, I don't know the chemical name, to help his body heal and be able to function again properly without the supplementation of testosterone. And, he got in trouble for that, too. So I just kind of sat back and I was like, well, I guess I'm glad that I didn't have anything scheduled, because what was the course that they expected everybody to do, especially when he was following doctor's instructions.
The UFC is getting set for another weekend where they will promote 2 different cards, and it will start off with their show in Auckland, New Zealand, which kicks off at 2:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. Topping the bill in that one will be a middleweight contest as James Huna will be taking on Nate Marquardt as Marquardt returns to the 185-pound weight class, and we now take a closer look at Auckland's main event on Saturday.
As the UFC expands globally, many fans have yearned for the days of Pride FC's stacked fight cards, where you might even see Nick Diaz on the prelims. Well, those days are gone and will never be back. We've entered the UFC Fight Pass era, where matching a local star versus a mid-level contender has become the norm.
Fight Pass is awesome. I believe it's the future. I really do believe it's the future. Imagine if you could program your cable network where you could just get exactly what you want and just pay for that. Right? That's where the internet is going,
In New Zealand on Saturday, the matchup of Nate Marquardt versus James Huna fits the bill perfectly. Huna is a native of Australia, which makes him the local attraction, and while he is coming off 2 losses, they came against top 10 opponents at 205 pounds. The 32-year-old's biggest advantages in this one will be his size and power. As he drops down to 185 pounds for the first time. Coming off 3 losses, Nate Marquardt is moving back to middleweight for the first time since returning to the UFC. If Marquardt can avoid the big punches of Huna and use his well-rounded skill set to keep the Aussie guessing, he should be able to get back in the win column. Will Huna smash the great, or can Marquardt upset the local attraction?
Later on that day in San Antonio, Texas, it's going to be a firefight at 145 pounds with contenders Cub Swanson and Jeremy Stephens meeting in the night's main event. Swanson rides a 5-fight win streak into San Antonio, while Stephens has been a perfect 3-0 since cutting down from lightweight, with both men believing that an impressive showing Saturday should give them a crack at the featherweight championship later this year.
You know, I'm just excited to get back in there, and honestly, it's an honor for me to be fighting in the main event. I feel it's well-deserved on my part.
Getting very fluid, and how about that front kick from Swanson?
You know, I asked Carlos Condit and a bunch of other guys that have done these so many times and try to get advice on doing the 5-5s. So I feel good about it. I honestly feel like a title fight for me is inevitable, and I just know in my career, everything I've gone through, that's the next step for me. And you know, I'm just trying to enjoy the moment and put on good performances for the fans.
Jeremy Little Heathen Stephens!
I think he's a tough guy. He throws as hard as he can every time.
But I like what Stephens is doing early. Big kick from Stephens!
I'm ready to go to war, man. I feel like this is a guy that, you know, if I'm pulling back, you know, that's the end of his punch. And, you know, I spar a lot of boxers that hit really hard, and I know that when you want to get hit with a good shot, you pull your head back and you get at the end of their punch. So I don't think sticking and moving is, you know, the whole time is the best option. So I'm just going to mix it up and go out there and have fun.
Trying to stump the takedown and gets his own. Beautiful.
I'm still getting better. I feel like my game is still progressing. So I feel like this is just another opportunity for me to get better, get more prepared for the title fight. And when I do get the title fight, I feel like I will be ready.
Swanson is preparing for this fight in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the Jackson Winklejohn camp, and we hear from one of his teammates, UFC light heavyweight champion John Jones, who is very high on the red-hot Cub Swanson as he goes into battle this weekend looking for his 6th consecutive victory.
Cub Swanson is phenomenal. I tell him all the time that he's one of the best fighters in the gym. You know, sometimes I don't think he believes me. I think he's starting to believe me. I mean, I see him do extraordinary things. You know, the heavyweight classes are about 2 hours before the lightweight classes, and I always stay behind just to watch Cub Swanson compete. He's amazing, and he's just capable of so much. He truly is a mixed martial artist, and I cannot wait to watch him fight for a title.
And finally, we hear from UFC Hall of Famer Ken Shamrock, who recently buried the hatchet with UFC President Dana White over some long-standing issues between the two. We hear from Shamrock about some of his thoughts on the current ranking system within the organization and how it's working for the UFC.
As you move up the ranks, pay scales go up, and you get more responsibility. There's nothing different in the UFC, except for the pay raise and the responsibilities. As you're going up as a person that goes on a pay-per-view event, if you're on a pay-per-view event, that means you are somebody. They just don't throw anybody on pay-per-view. You have a personality, you are tough, you're getting a shot at on pay-per-view. You've rose up through the ranks. Once they get there, that's where they should start being given their credit, which is money. That's their credit, money. As you move up, you get paid. I think that as you move up, and then the more responsibility that you take on, then you should be paid accordingly. You should be, I look at it like this. If the company is relying on me to draw pay-per-views, we become partners. Because without me, they can't make the numbers. And without them, I don't have a platform. And that's where I think the letdown is that we're not treating these guys like professionals. That when they come in and they win a fight, or even if they're in a main event and they almost beat the champion and they fall short on a split decision, I think the guys earned right to come back with a pay raise, especially as much money is being made. They shove it in your mouth and you eat it because we tell you to. And they're doing the same thing to the fans. They're telling the fans, I don't care what you want, because you're going to like what we give you, because every now and then we're going to give you something free. And then after, we're never really going to fix the core of the problem, but we're going to make you like it right now.
I'm here with John Ramdeen, and we've got a stacked edition of 3 rounds coming up. What can you dangle for the viewer at home of what is to come?
I got nothing. We're looking at the whole mixed martial arts landscape. What is Scott Coker's next move with the Bellator organization? Who will get the next crack at the 145-pound title? And in a week or so, we've got one of the biggest cards of the year for the UFC.
It's a stacked card. It's a stacked 3 rounds. All the questions you've had all week, he's got the answers when we come back on Fight News Now.
Like UFC 73.
we're back on the show, and this weekend the UFC will hit 2 continents in one day with shows in Auckland, New Zealand and San Antonio, Texas. And here to discuss those cards and much more are our analysts, John Ramdeen and Robin Black, as we get set for 21 UFC fights on Saturday.
Holy smokes, I love it though. You look at the main event of San Antonio, Texas, you have Cub Swanson and Jeremy Stephens, an outstanding matchup at 145 pounds that can impact the featherweight division. UFC President Dana White says Jeremy Stephens could get a crack at the title with a great performance, but I think he's forgetting about the fact that Jose Aldo has a matchup with the #1 contender in the 145-pound class in Chad Mendes. The rematch, we saw what happened when Jose Aldo's teammate, Renan Barão, faced Chad Mendes' teammate, TJ Dillashaw. He became the new bantamweight champion. What happens if that happens in this fight? You would expect the UFC to say, well, Aldo won fight 1, Mendes won fight 2. We need to have a third fight, so Jeremy Stephens, suck it.
Yeah, and I mean, what about Cub Swanson, man? Like, that's crazy. You know, Dana White likes to play with these guys a little bit, but let me first say 21 fights this weekend. You know what's the worst thing about that? There's not 22 fights. That's the problem that we got here. But this fight is unbelievable. If you watch one fight this weekend, if you watch one fight this year, it better be this one. Both guys just so exciting. Both guys so desperate to win. They have that built-in desire, and great fighters need that great opponent. Both of these guys have looked incredible, but this will be their defining fight for both guys. Cub Swanson just kind of entering his prime. Jeremy Stephens, 28 years old. You got these guys who are chronologically young, but real good, solid veterans at 145. Their striking is off the charts. They're very different in skill level, but both guys will want it so badly. This is the type of fight that can make a fighter, that can make 2 fighters, that can make you know, a competition between 2 guys that'll last a long time.
I mean, the fight, I think, is going to deliver fight of the night. Stylistically, that's just the way these guys match up. When you break down the fight to patience, to guys making very few errors, not getting emotionally charged in this fight, who do you see it swaying towards?
Wow, they're both pretty emotional fighters. I mean, if anything, Jeremy Stephens seems like an emotional guy, but his seems to be in a smaller range. He doesn't get all wound up and all down, whereas Cub Swanson fights with a lot of emotion. That's part of what's going to make this so exciting. They're very different in the way that they fight, because Jeremy Stephens is going to kind of look to set traps. He's going to catch you in the one opening that you have, whereas Cub Swanson is going to try to create openings. He's going to take you in places, make you move a certain way. It is possible that Cub Swanson has improved even more in his boxing. He knocked unconscious 4 of the great last 5 fighters that he's faced. Only uber tough Dustin Poirier survived being knocked out. But do you knock out Jeremy Stephens? Does Jeremy Stephens knock him out? They both have that ability. You could see Cub Swanson really zigging and zagging and moving and pivoting and exploiting Stephens' more limited footwork. But I think Stephens' meat and potatoes solid striking will actually be just the right answer for Swanson. This one's a coin toss, and it's a lot of fun.
A great weekend of fights, of course, in New Zealand. The main event, James Huna taking on Nate Marquardt. We're going to switch from the UFC over to Bellator. We've learned earlier this week that Scott Coker now in charge of the Bellator organization. Who knows? Is he going to change the name? What is he going to do? Is he going to shake things up? We know that the tournament format probably going to disappear in the Bellator organization. Recently, they announced 21 cuts to the Bellator organization. What does that mean to you?
I think 21 cuts suggests you're not going to see a show every week. I mean, you got to figure, when you're running a show every week, you need every possible body. So that's a possibility. It also means Coker's probably going to go out and look to poach some other guys. Maybe there's some young guys he's kept his eye on. I mean, it's an interesting one because, you know, his predecessor, Bjorn Rebney, did an amazing job to get it to this point. But the belief from Viacom, and Scott Coker's on board with this, is all of those differentiating factors. The tournament format, the weekly thing, making it like a sports league, seasons, all of that stuff. It isn't relevant to get it to the next level. That worked to differentiate it to here, but to get it beyond here, you've got to go with what's worked in the past, and Scott Coker's a worked in the past kind of guy.
Dana White has said that Scott Coker is the guy. He's going to be able to turn this around. I'm very surprised that he's kind of lent his support to Scott Coker, but it's kind of the PC game to play right now for the UFC president.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Like, you can't go after him right away. People will think that you're scared. People will think you're intimidated, and they got to be at least a little bit. I mean, they're the death Death Star still. Like, they are running mixed martial arts for the foreseeable future. But this is a change that definitely a lot of people in the business see will have a lasting effect and a lot of ripples, including a change in the pay structure over time, a real opportunity for guys to believe there's a second choice, and a lot of other areas. It's going to be fascinating.
And what do you think the focus is? Obviously, the goal for Viacom and Scott Coker is to deliver a better product on television, but do you believe the focus is also to have pay-per-views, to get these guys on CBS like we saw Strikeforce or saw Elite XC? Do you think that's the goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If you're Viacom, the goal was to progress and to grow. And where did they succeed? They brought eyeballs to Spike. They filled that space left by the UFC. They made it so that people believed it's still a home of fighting. That's all good. Now it's time to next level it. We talked about this before. I think the most interesting thing is going to be what business people do when they feel they got the right guy. They're like, okay, guys, we've had a $20 million war chest we were going to spend on promotion, on this kind of thing, on large scale acquisitions and stuff. We believe in our guy now. Let's make some big moves.
UFC 175 goes down the first weekend in July in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. The main event, almost a difficult one to predict. Chris Weidman taking on Lyoto Machida. First, people were like, oh yeah, Chris Weidman's the guy. He took it Anderson Silva not once but twice. This guy is the man. But oh yeah, he's fighting Lyoto Machida, the guy that can stymie an attack, that can just use movement to score points. And then people say, wait. But we saw what Phil Davis did against Lyoto Machida. Chris Weidman can definitely do that, or can he?
I don't know, man. This one is really fascinating. This is the one that is going to write the story on who Chris Weidman is. And that's weird to say after beating Anderson Silva twice, but I believe this is the fight that will define him. He's got a coach who has a background in enough traditional mixed martial arts to affect the game plan. Weidman can do it. I'm betting on Weidman, but it's a fascinating and really tough to call fight.
John Pollock, Chris Weidman, Lyoto Machida, Ronda Rousey, and then the following night, BJ Penn and Frankie Edgar.
What is a weekend unless there's two UFC cards? It's the new normal in mixed martial arts. Thank you very much, guys. And to catch all of the fallout from this weekend, the best thing to do is catch 5 rounds Monday night at 7 Eastern with Ramby and Black running through all of the highlights from both events. Don't go anywhere because we still have The Shift as we take a look at Transformers 4, and our weekly viral video is still to come. Hold on to your shirt. Welcome back to Fight News Now. I'm John Pollock, and we've got live kickboxing action coming up this Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern right here on Fight Network, courtesy of Infusion. Tune in to catch all of the live action as we will be carrying it for you this Sunday. Right now, we send it over, though, to Priscilla Caripan with The Shift as she takes a look at Transformers 4 coming out this summer.
Autobots hit the silver screen once more in the 4th installment of Transformers franchise, which hits theaters this weekend. Transformers Age of Extinction takes place 4 years after Transformers Dark of the Moon, and this time Mark Wahlberg steps in to fight alongside the Autobots.
This is the greatest advance in modern physics since the splitting of the atom.
A rare metal, molecularly unstable.
What they're made of.
This movie picks up a few years after the third movie. At the end of the third movie, there had been a gigantic battle in Chicago where the Autobots had emerged victorious, but the scale of that battle was so enormous that the world's view of Transformers had changed. People are very skeptical that the Autobots should be here at all.
Bring it up, all the way.
Dad, you can't keep spending money on junk. In the beginning of this movie, you see like this normal family put into this insane situation.
This stuff is what's going to put you through college.
Their first instinct is just to get rid of this thing, get the reward. Nobody understands the magnitude of the ramifications of trying to keep a truck like this and what the government will do.
I think we just found a transformer.
You have no idea what you're involved with here.
Well, Harold Attinger has been, for the last 5 years or so, has been pursuing aliens, Decepticons and Autobots. That's his job.
Dad!
I'm going to ask you this once. Where is Optimus Prime?
My job in this film is to be the shark, like in Jaws. Whenever Savoy shows up, the audience goes, uh-oh, this isn't good.
We meet Optimus Prime at a very low moment.
How many more of my kind must be sacrificed?
He is at a place where humanity has betrayed him. And so his sense of wanting to protect us is challenged.
Gotta have faith, Prime. Maybe not in who we are, but who we can be.
I continue to be in awe at the scope and the size of the movie.
I'm not leaving my dad.
I think it is the next level of these movies. Bigger, it's more explosion.
It's everything that the fanboys have waited for.
We need a new army.
These are robots in disguise. There's so much more to it than you first imagined.
The stakes are life and death. They don't get any higher than that.
That's it for The Shift this week. Back over to you, John.
Thank you, Priscilla, and we are nearly out of time, but strategically each week we always leave just enough time for our weekly viral video where we comb the internet and are never disappointed with what is found.
He's dead! He's dead!
You all right? And that brings a close to Fight News Now. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and our guests, John Jones, Frank Mir, and Georgie Caripan. Don't miss the MMA Report each Thursday on FightNetwork.com and iTunes. This week I will be joined by Alexis Davis as well as Kelvin Gastelum chatting about his fight this Saturday. And on behalf of John Ramdian, Robin Black, Priscilla Caripan, and the crew at Fight Network, my name is John Pollock, and we will speak to you all next week.